Hello everyone! Today we will be looking at another commander deck. And this time it's red again. I promise you guys, next time I won't be reviewing red. So, today we have Krenko, the mob boss. It is a 4 mana legendary creature, goblin warrior, which is a 3/3. Now he has the ability to just tap. You don't even need to pay anything, just turn him sideways. It would X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is the number of goblins you control. This deck gets out of hand real quickly. Let's put him over there. Now then, first of all, let's just start off with the boring bits. For this deck, we have 27 mountains. Then the rest of the lands. We have a Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. He enters the battlefield tapped. Whenever a mountain enters the battlefield, well, we have 27, alright. If you control at least 5 other mountains, you may have Valakut deal 3 damage to target creature or player, and it taps for red. Then we have the Goblin Burrows, taps for 1 colorless. If you pay 2 and you tap it, goblins get +2/+0 until end of turn. Imagine that, with all those tokens in play. Forgotten Cave comes into play tapped, taps for red, cycling 1 red. And the same, but cycling 2, colorless. Smoldering creature is that. Nyktos, the Shrine to Nyx. It's a legendary land, taps for colorless, or if you pay 2 and you tap it, you can choose a color. Obviously you choose red. Then you can add mana to your mana pool, an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color. Your devotion to a color is the number of mana symbols of that color in the mana costs of permanents you control. So if you only have Krenko, you have a devotion of 2 red. Hall of the Bandit Lord comes into play tapped, pay 3 life, add 1 mana to your mana pool. If that mana is spent on a creature spell, that creature has haste. Excellent for Krenko. High Market taps for 1 colorless, or sacrifice a creature, you gain 1 life. This is your sack outlet. If anything happens to Krenko, you can just nope, sack it. Or if you have so many tokens and you need the life, just sack it. Contested War Zone. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, that creature's controller gains control of Contested War Zone. Tap it for 1 colorless, or 1 and tap. Attacking creatures get +1/+0 until end of turn. Yeah, you just want to play this if you have an army already and just go all out. Maze of Ith. Tap, target attacking creature becomes untapped. This creature neither deals nor receives damage as a result of combat. Yes, this is an oldie but a goodie. Right, so that's it for the lands. So the boring stuff is out of the way now. Well, almost. Our mana artifacts. We have, of course, Sol Ring. Everyone plays Sol Ring. That's 1 mana artifact, tap for 2. Grim Monolith does not untap during your untap step. Tap to add 3 colorless mana to your mana pool. Play this ability as a mana source. Yes, old language, old magic language. And for 4 mana you can untap him. And of course, extra planar lands. Imprint. When extra planar lands comes into play, you may remove target lands you control from the game. The removed card is imprinted on this artifact. Whenever a land with the same name as the imprinted card is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana to his or her mana pool of any type that land produces. Super duper. Right, then we have kind of a mixture here between boosting your creatures and getting the mana you need. We have Caged Sun, 6 mana artifact. As it comes into battle, onto the battlefield, you choose a color. Red, obviously. Creatures you control of the chosen color get +1/+1. Whenever a land's ability adds 1 or more mana of the chosen color to your mana pool, add 1 additional mana of that color to your mana pool. And then of course we have the Gauntlet of Power. When it comes into play, choose a color. Creatures of the chosen color get +1/+1. And whenever a basic land is tapped for mana of the chosen color, its controller adds 1 mana of that color to his or her mana pool. Right. Now then, of course, that is not the only boost we have. We have way more. And we will start off with the traditional coat of arms. Each creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature on the battlefield that shares at least one creature type with it. Then, of course, we have the second coat of arms, the Door of Destinies. As it comes into play, choose a creature type. Goblin. Whenever you play a spell of that type, put a charge counter on Door of Destinies. Creatures you control of that type get +1/+1 for each charge counter on Door of Destinies. Then we get a mixture of a creature and something like what we have seen before. Yes, this is a new card from Aether Revolt. It's 2 mana, it's a 2/1, it's Metallic Mimic. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Goblin again. Metallic Mimic is the chosen type in addition to its other types. Each other creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Super duper. Then we have the Eldrazi Monument. Creatures you control get +1/+1, have flying, and are indestructible. That is just sick. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. If you can't, sacrifice Eldrazi Monument. Sure. Yeah. With Krenko, it's no problem to keep this in play. Next up, Quest for the Goblin Lord. It's an enchantment, and whenever a goblin enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a quest counter on Quest for the Goblin Lord. As long as Quest of the Goblin Lord has 5 or more creature counters on it, creatures you control get +2/+0. Then we have In the Web of War, also an enchantment. When a creature comes into play under your control, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. This is only this is a temporary boost, but still a boost nonetheless. The Sword of the Paruns. It's a 4 mana artifact equipment. For 3 you can equip it. As long as equipped creature is tapped, tapped creatures you control get +2/+0. As long as it's untapped, the untapped creatures you control get +0/+2. Sweet. And for 3 mana you can tap or untap equipped creature. Excellent for Krenko. Just go crazy. Just tap, 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 tap on tap, tap on tap, and keep making those goblins. Right, Skull Clamp. It's a 1 mana artifact, 1 to equip. Equipped creature gets +1, -1. When equipped creature is put into the graveyard, draw 2 cards. No drawback there. Of course, you will be targeting your tokens most of the time. Alright, so let's just discuss some more equipments. We of course have the Swift Foot Boots. It's 2 mana, equipped for 1, equipped creature has hexproof and haste. And next up, Illusionist's Bracers. Whenever an ability of equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. Equip 3. Awesome. Awesome cards. You can just double the amount of tokens that you play. Right. What else do we have? We have something amazing in Commander. As we can play a lot of the sets, I included Winds of Change. It's 1 mana sorcery. All players shuffle their hands into their libraries and then draw the same number of cards they originally held. Yesterday I was playing a tournament, Commander tournament, and I played Krenko. I was the one to start the game and I played the Winds of Change on the very first turn. The guy next to me had a pretty good opening hand, he said. Then he shuffled it back, drew the same number of cards, and had no basic land. That's excellent. And that went on for 4 turns. I love it. I love to lock players out of the game. Even though it's frowned upon, I don't mind. I like it. Wheel of Fortune, 3 mana. A sorcery, all players must discard their hands and draw 7 new cards. Vandal Blast. Destroy target artifact you don't control and overload for 5. And if you overload it, it destroys each artifact you don't control. Very good card indeed. Then we have a bit of control with Blood Moon. All non-basic lands become mountains. I had an instance yesterday where everyone was playing multiple color decks. 2 players were playing 3 color decks and one of them was playing a 4 color deck. And I dropped the Blood Moon on turn 3. And they were like, yeah, okay. We're not screwed yet. They had some artifacts that could make colors, but they didn't have that in play yet. And also one of them only had 4 basic lands in his deck, so... oh my god. That's also the same category as locking players out of the game. Excellent, just try it sometime, it's awesome. Ley Line of Punishments. If it's in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. Players can't gain life. Damage can't be prevented. It's mostly the players can't gain life part. We had someone on the table yesterday who played lifelink. Yeah, you don't want that you don't want to have that happening. You just drop it and you're like, okay, stop it with your lifelink. So next up, we have some more amazing cards that work absolutely fabulously with Krenko. Warstorm Surge. An enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. Now imagine this. Krenko generates tokens. For example, you have 10 tokens in play, and that's really not that uncommon. And you tap it and you make 10 more. Yeah, they all deal 1 damage, so it deals 10 damage to someone that you want. Impact Tremors is even better. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. Yes, go ahead and make those 10 tokens. Everyone loses 10 life, except for you, of course. Outpost Siege. As it enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons, and I would advise to use Dragons. If you choose Khans, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. It's not too bad, but Dragons is even better. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Sure, play your Wrath of God. You'll die because of it. And Boggart Shenanigans, which basically does the same. Whenever another goblin you control is put into the graveyard from play, you may have Boggart Shenanigans deal 1 damage to target player. And it's also a goblin enchantment. That's great. Now then, we have some more enchantments here. Berserker's Onslaught. Attacking creatures you control have double strike. We have Furnace of Wrath. If a source would deal damage to a creature or player, deals double that damage to that creature or player instead. And then, of course, we have the Dictate of the Twin Gods. It's a flash card. If a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. And we have 2 more enchantments here, but these function on goblins. So, Goblin Bombardment is the first one. Sacrifice a creature. Goblin Bombardment deals 1 damage to target creature or player, so generate a lot of tokens, make them all deal damage because they enter the battlefield, sacrifice them with this card to deal 1 damage each, and then they again deal 1 damage because they leave the battlefield. That is really, it's 3 damage per creature, that's just a lot. And imagine if they have haste, then they can attack as well. Goblin Warrens. Oh my god, it's such an old card. I used to play this card in my very first deck. This was one of my first rares. And as you can see, it has been played with a lot. So, this enchantment says, for 3 mana, sacrifice 2 goblins, put 3 1/1 red goblin tokens onto the battlefield. Isn't that amazing? Now then, if you have a lot of goblins, you'll obviously want a second combat phase. So, play Savage Beating only during your turn and only during combat. Choose one. Creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn, or untap all creatures you control. And after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. And if you choose to entwine it for 2, you get to choose both. So that's awesome. Just give them all double strike and attack with them. Right, on to the goblins. First of all, the 1 mana goblins, the cheapos. We have the Goblin Lackey, of course. If he deals damage, successfully deals damage to a player, you may choose a goblin card in your hand and put it into play. Goblin Guide, it has haste, it's a 2/2. When it attacks, defending player reveals the top card of his or her library. If it's a land card, that player puts it into his or her hand. Goblin Welder, choose target artifact a player controls and target artifact card in that player's graveyard. If both targets are still legal as this ability resolves, that player simultaneously sacrifices the artifact and returns the artifact card to the battlefield. So yeah, you just switch it. If they have a great artifact in play and let's say a Soul Ring in the graveyard, you'll just switch it. Switch it good. Switcheroo. Goblin Sledder. Sacrifice a goblin, target creature gets +1/+1. Goblin Soothsayer. Sacrifice a creature, all red creatures. Sacrifice a goblin, all red creatures get +1/+1. Legion Loyalists, Haste and Battalion. Whenever Legion Loyalists and at least 2 other creatures attack, creatures you control gain first strike and trample until end of turn and can be blocked by creature tokens this turn. Goblin Bushwhacker. It has kicker for 1, so you may pay an additional 1 when you cast this spell. Cost 1. It has a kicker of 1. So if you would decide to do that, it costs 2. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, creatures you control get +1/+0 and haste until end of turn. Spike Shot Elder. For 3 mana, he can deal damage equal to its power to target creature or player. With all those pump cards in play, this can get out of hand real quickly as well. And a Goblin Chirurgeon. It's a 0/2 goblin, and for 0 you can sacrifice a goblin to regenerate a target creature. Cool. Next up, the 2 mana goblins. We start off with the Skirk Drill Sergeant. It's a 2/1 for 2. Whenever Skirk Drill Sergeant or another goblin is put into a graveyard from play, you may pay 3. If you do, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a goblin card, put it into play. Otherwise, put it into your graveyard. Sure. Goblin Recruiter. One of the best goblin cards, in my opinion, out there. When it enters play, you may search your library for any number of goblin cards. Any. Reveal those cards to all players, shuffle your library, and then put the cards on top of your library in any order. Then we have Goblin Pile Driver. It's a 1/2 with protection from blue. And when it attacks, it gets +2 until end of turn for each other attacking goblin. Oh, wow. Bloodmark Mentor. Red creatures you control at first strike. Goblin War Driver. It is a 2/2 with Battle Cry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And we have a Goblin Lookout. Sacrifice a goblin, all goblins get +2/+0 until end of turn. Now for the 3 mana goblins, we start off with the classic Goblin King. This card has had an errata. It's no longer a lord, it's a goblin. I believe it's a Goblin Warrior, if I'm not mistaken. It's a 2/2, and instead of this line of text here, it now says other goblins gain Mountain Walk and +1/+1. So Goblin Chieftain, Other goblin creatures you control get +1/+1 and have haste, and it has haste from itself. Goblin War Chief, goblin creatures you control have haste, and goblin spells you play cost 1 less to play. Goblin Matron, when it enters the battlefield, search your library for a goblin card. If you do, reveal it and put it into your hand. Awesome card as well. Sensation Gorger. Oh my god, we had so much fun yesterday with this card. Really, oh my god. So, what does it do? 2/2, and it has kinship. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may look at the top card of your library. If it shares a creature type with Sensation Gorger, you may reveal it. If you do, each player discards his or her hand and draws 4 cards. And we have a Gem Palm Incinerator. It has cycling 2. And when you cycle Gem Palm Incinerator, you may have it deal X damage to target creature, where X is the number of goblins in play. Excellent removal in this deck. Now for the 4 mana goblins. Goblin Ringleader, it has haste, it's a 2/2. When it comes into play, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all goblin cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library. When I played this yesterday, I had the unfortunate misfortune of revealing 4 non-goblin cards. Beetleback Chief. 2/2, when it enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 red goblin tokens onto the battlefield. Goblin Pyromancer. When he comes into play, all goblins get +3/+0 until end of turn, and at end of turn, destroy all goblins. I was so close to getting this guy into play and have Krenko generate tons of goblins. Then at the end of turn, it would have been all destroyed, and then all the creatures leaving the battlefield would deal damage. Bit of a shame. We didn't finish the game in time, so it was a tie for everyone. Reckless One. It has haste, and it has power and toughness equal to the number of goblins in play. And for the final tire, we have the 5 mana goblins, the big guys. Kiki Jiki, the Mirror Breaker. It has haste. It's a 2/2, and when you tap it, put a token that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control onto the battlefield. That token has haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Siege Gang Commander. When it comes into play, put 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens into play. For 2, sacrifice a goblin. Deals 2 damage to target creature or player. And we have the Goblin Assassin. When Goblin Assassin or another goblin comes into play, each player flips a coin. Each player whose coin comes up tails sacrifices a creature. Yeah, excellent removal as well. And if you lose some creatures, don't worry about it. You'll probably have them deal damage anyway when they lose the battlefield. Now for the final selection of cards, we have 5 cards that are creatures but not goblins, but they work specifically well with this deck. We have Urabrask, the Hidden. It's a 4/4. Creatures you control have haste. Creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Ogre Battle Driver. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature gains +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Purphoros, the God of the Forge. Indestructible. As long as your devotion to red is less than 5, Purphoros isn't a creature. Or else it's a 6/5. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Purphoros deals 2 damage to each opponent. Keep cranking out those tokens with Krenko. You'll be having a blast. And for 3, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Then we have Hellrider. It has haste. It's a 3/3 creature. Whenever a creature you control attacks, Hellrider deals 1 damage to defending player. Yes. And Predator Dragon. Flying, haste, and devour 2. As this comes into play, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This creature comes into play with twice that many +1/+1 counters on it. Sure, I'll sacrifice 20 tokens. I'll have a 44/44 flying haste in the battlefield. Excellent. Krenko. It is a great, awesome, very fun deck to play. My good friend Tim, he made Krenko way back and he was going to show up yesterday as well, but last minute he couldn't make it. So I thought to myself, well, I already decided I would play Krenko as well, and I told him, hey, share me your deck list, I'm gonna copy it and alter it a little bit. So I have mostly got the deck from him, and I've altered it a little bit. I tweaked it a bit, because there's no Goblin Sharpshooter in here. I don't have one. Several other cards, like the expensive Gauntlet from Unlimited. I don't have that one either. He does, I don't. And stuff like that. Some decisions I made to pull from the deck, and some decisions I made to add to the deck in benefit of the deck. So, thank you all for watching. Next week will be the winner of that tournament. Yes, I also made his deck, and I will show you guys next week. So be sure to watch next week. Bye bye.